Welcome back to the second Rach, the Wretched One podcast. And my name's Rachel, and join me for another 30 to 40 minutes of inconsistent rambling that I hope can accompany you for the day and make you think about things that you hadn't thought about before, even if you didn't want to. So, I don't work on Mondays, and I spent that day basically doing last week's podcast, and then Tuesday I went into work. So I work in London, as I said before, and I live in what they would call, I suppose, the home county. So it takes me about an hour to get into London, and it's no bother really, because I just basically jump on the train after rush hour, and then when I get into London I just do like a short 20-minute walk to the office where I am. So all good really, and I've been doing that journey now since January, and it's working out okay. But funny thing happened on Tuesday. As usual, I finished work, walked down to the train station again, normally in my own mind. You know, it always happens. When you do things over and over again, you sort of like get into a pattern of things, and then you literally zone out sometimes. I don't know if you've ever driven somewhere or driven a journey many times, and then you've gone, hang on a sec, I don't remember passing so-and-so. I'm sure I haven't passed it. I'm sure I've missed it. But you've literally just zoned out for a few seconds. So anyway, me walking home, or walking to the train station, I should say, get on my train, as I do, and I always get this same train. I get on it, and it's about an hour, and I zone out. So I spend the time, I think I read the Evening Standard, and then you can pick that up for free. I like doing the crosswords at the back, the quick one, and the double, the cryptic, and the easy crossword. I like doing those too. And then any kind of YouTube shows that I've downloaded, I will have a quick listen of those, because I've subscribed to YouTube Red, which I do recommend if you use YouTube a lot, because you can just download what you need, and then when you're on the underground or on a train which has got crappy signal, as we all know, even if you use their allocated Wi-Fi, it's no point, you've actually got something to listen to. So tutus, I'm sitting there, and then the hour comes up and my body clock's telling me, yeah, we're going to be stopping now, this is it, my stop. And it says, this train terminates here. That's what I hear anyway. So I sit there chilling for a good, maybe 4 minutes, because I think, right, let me just listen to the end of this YouTube thing I've got, and then I'll get up and I'll just, get out of the train station and then walk to my car as I do. Anyway, this guy comes up and he's like, yeah, so we've terminated. I said, yeah, I'm getting up. He goes, yeah, this is St Albans, which is like not the station that I'm supposed to be going to. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, this is St Albans. I got on the wrong train. I'd basically got on the wrong train, hadn't noticed not one of the stops, not one of them. And I'm sitting there on some terminated train. And not only that, the guy had come on because he was basically going to clear things up to start the train again to go back into London. So if he hadn't stopped me, I would have been on a fast course straight back into London, and that would have put another hour going back in for me to sit and wait for another train and another hour to get back. I don't know what time I would have got back. Vex. But anyway, I just got off the train. I was like, well, you know what? A blessing in disguise. At least I can just get off the train and get, the next one, and then make my way home. So that's what I did. So yeah, that's how my week started. But it was all right. It wasn't a bad start, but it was a bit stupid, a bit of a schoolgirl error there. But these things happen. I tell you one thing though about trains that I like and I dislike. What I like about the train is that you can zone out. You can get on the train in the morning, and get your head collected for what you're going to do for the day. As I said, tune into maybe your favourite radio station or your podcast or anything on YouTube that you want to catch up on. Or some people download like their favourite series. I see people all the time looking at things like The First 48 or looking at a few episodes of Luther or whatever. You can use that time to catch up on your life. And I quite like that. And it's a zone out time. It's almost like a form of meditation, really, where you just literally take the time for you. You're not having to do anything. You're not driving the train. You're going to have to get off soon. You've got a seat. Everything's blessed. It's nice and zen. But what I don't like when I get on the train are two things. One, like I've said it before, you'll fight to get onto that Wi-Fi carriage. Another one that has a little sticker on the window that says, yeah, free Wi-Fi. And you think, yeah, this is good. And the Wi-Fi don't work on but one station. So there's no point. So I hate that. What is the point of telling us that we've got Wi-Fi and we can't use it. It's the same as when you go to certain train stations or areas and they say there's free Wi-Fi and you log into it and you might as well be on AOL dial-up because forget it. It's either chopping in and out or it doesn't work altogether. So yeah, I hate that. And another thing that really, really gets on my nerves are people who put their feet on seats. Why are you doing this? You get on the train and there's those seats, you know, the ones where it's like 2 and 2 opposite each other. And there's someone sitting there and they have to, it's almost like they can't sit with their feet on the floor. It's like that's how they've been brought up or that's how they're at home. So they're big dirty shoes that they've been wearing up and down the street all day, stepping in old wee. Maybe there was like dog poo somewhere that got washed away a bit by the rain and they've stepped in it and all kinds of things. And then they sit with their feet on the edge of the opposite seat. How selfish is that? So now the next person comes along, because this person might have put their feet down. So this person who's come along has no knowledge or no prior knowledge of what's happened. And they sit down with their good clothes and they're sitting basically where somebody has been resting the bottom of their shoes on the seat. So on the back of their trousers now or the back of their skirt, they're getting whatever was on these shoes. Then they go home and sit on their own sofa. That drives me mad. But not to the point where, you know, I'm going to go over and say something. It's just like you just sit there and almost like you shake your head to yourself because it's like, you know, space, awareness of other things, you know, awareness of people. That is all you need to have. But not let me get too negative. But actually, there is another thing that annoys me as well. I just thought about this as I'm talking. So I've said about, you know, the lack of Wi-Fi and then people putting their feet on seats. And another thing that annoys me is my own phone. Is predictive text. The predictive text on my phone gets on my nerves. Yes, I can take it off. But it's there to try and assist me. It's a thing there to help me text faster to my friends or to whoever I'm texting. But what is it? You're texting fast and then you look down, you press send and it's gobbledygook. So it's not even like the predictive text has put English words in place of what it thought you wanted to say. It's just chatting pure fraff. It's just put forth pure fraff on the text. So now your friends are looking at your WhatsApp like you're crazy, like you can't spell, like you can't read, or you don't know what you've said. And not everybody has time to go back and re-look at what they've written and, you know, reassess the grammar, etc. But please just try and make my text make some kind of sense. I was trying to make sense. So now I know why a lot of people use the voice notes on WhatsApp. I know people say it's because, you know, if you can't spell very well, it's a good way to use it. But I can see why in haste it's easier to just send a message like that, because if you're sending predictive text, no one's going to understand what you're trying to say. So I talk about exercising a lot. I think I talked about it before. And the kind of exercise I do at the moment is pole fitness. Well, I call it pole fitness, pole exercise, pole dancing, depending on the stigma or depending on how people assess it. I've been doing it for about 2 years now. Really, really enjoy it. And the way it came about is I went to a club once. I went to this nightclub and there was a pole there. And a lot of girls were like, you know, doing moves around the pole. I say moves in inverted commas. Basically, they were doing the standard, like, you know, bending over, the what they call them slut drops, and just trying to look sexy in the club because, you know, guys were there, blah de blah, just trying to get attention. I suppose that's why the pole was there in the first place. It's there to, you know, when people have loosened up a bit, they can then try and show off some kind of amateur moves that they've got. So anyway, that's going on. I'm looking from afar. I'm like, okay, don't know what these ladies are doing, but, you know, each to their own. We've all had a drink. They're having a good time. And then this girl just calmly just put her drink down, went over to the pole, and then just like went up on it and started doing all these amazing tricks. It was amazing. And I was just there dumbfounded, just watching her. And she was so elegant but so strong at the same time. And I thought, I want to learn that. I want to learn how to do that. So fast forward, I've been learning it for about 2 years, like I've said, and I train once a week. I used to do it twice a week with a group of girls, and it involved doing, you know, a dance class version, which was really cool because I had different routines. And then there was like a solo kind of thing they call tricks and spins. So you'd learn like little techniques and you do that in a group as well. But since I've now started working back in London, I don't get the time to go to that. So I have private lessons. So I have one-on-ones on a Monday with my teacher, Lisa, who is amazing, absolutely amazing. And she works me hard. So at the moment, every Monday now, I'm aching. I'm in pain. My back is hurting me. My arms are hurting me, but I'm enjoying it. And what I love about doing it is that you see progress in yourself. So it's almost like you've gone from years ago, you look at your body and you want it to look a certain way, to now looking at your body and wanting it to do certain things. So it's now about what my body can do for me, what not necessarily about how my body looks, if that makes sense. So I'm not worried that maybe my arms are getting bigger or my back is getting wider. It's that I'm getting stronger, so I can hold myself up. Oh, that's good. Okay, I've got more flexibility in my back. I can bend over more. Okay, my thighs are getting bigger. That means I can hold myself up on the pole a lot better. So it's becoming more function over form, which is really interesting because obviously years ago it's about how do you look in these clothes? How does your body look? So you could be, what do they call it? Like, you're slim but you're weak at the same time, or you're small but you're not strong enough to support yourself or hold yourself. So, in terms of fitness, I've always put it as, like the Hunger Games. How long would I survive? How long could I survive in the Hunger Games? When they all have to run up to that little mound to grab what they need. And I would like to think that from doing like pole fitness and keeping myself strong, I'll be able to, survive a good 20 minutes or get my things I need and run off. Also, now with my upper body strength, if heaven forbid I fall off a cliff or I trip over and I hang off a cliff, I should be able to pull myself back up again. So, I'm finding that not only is it such a great skill to learn in terms of flexibility and just overall impressiveness, it's great for your body, and I'm sure it will help me in the long run. But one of the things I just cannot do is point my toes. I don't understand it. It's like I look at other people and they can point their toes effortlessly, and it's not genetic because I've asked my mum to point her toes and I've asked my dad to point his toes, and they both can point their toes. So why can't I? In my brain, my toes are pointed. And when I look down, my feet are just straight. It doesn't make no sense. It looks terrible in pictures. So when my pole teacher takes a picture of my, of my work, I can see my feet just look like they look like hockey sticks. My legs look like hockey sticks with the feet just straight out. And I might be doing a move and I think that I look so elegant and my feet are pointing to the point of blooming cramping. And then she'll be like, point your toes. And I'm like, they are pointed. And they're not. I want to know, how does that happen? How can I get my brain to get me to point my toes? I can dance, so I can control my body. I'm, as I said, fairly strong. I know that I've got good coordination. I can copy someone's moves if they're dancing. So why can't I get my feet to just point in the right direction? And I've tried everything. I've tried YouTube videos. I've tried bending my feet at night. I've tried holding onto my feet to bend them, to make them, you almost put some muscle memory into thinking, this is what your feet should feel like if they're pointed, but I just can't do it. I've got no idea what to do. That is just one of the things that bugs me as well. But yeah, I suppose maybe I'm stuck with flexed feet forever. Being at home on a Monday is quite good because on the weekends I will do, I would say I catch up with everything. So I will do homework with my son, do a bit of shopping, as you know, go down to Aldi, and do like laundry and things like that. One thing I don't do as much anymore is housework because my mum now helps me with the housework. I think one day, was it last year or so, I think my dad came round to the house, and the next time I saw him and mum, they were like, well, dad said, he was like, your mum can help you with the housework. I think your mum could pop round and help you with the housework, which was his way of saying, I went round to your house, it was an absolute state. And I think your mum needs to help you because you're just not coping. But I think when you're working full time, it is hard to keep on top of what's going on in the house, as it were. And I know in the morning it's a bomb site because I'm running around, we're getting breakfast things ready, we're throwing everything in the bag, and then we're jumping in the car to go to our different destinations. So yes, I did cave in and have my mum help me with housework. So don't worry, I pay her now. So mum comes in and she, she likes it. She comes along and she, it's her way of, she says, we're doing a bit of exercise and going around the house and just, helping me keep on top of things, as it were. But housework is something that I don't mind doing if I get the time to do it. When I was younger, it was Saturday mornings. Saturday mornings is when you had to do cleaning. So my job was, first of all, I'd fill the bath up with water, and then I'd put some bleach in the bath and then put all my school shirts in there. And then I'd take like the Vanish, it was like a Vanish soap bar, like the fairy soap bars. And I would scrub all the collars and all the cuffs of all of my shirts and then let them soak. And also what my job was to do was to clean the bathroom, so all the grout in the bathroom, round the tiles, to make sure that they didn't go mouldy and stuff. So you'd get like a toothbrush, you spray it down with like one of those anti-mould or anti-bleach cleaners, and then anti-bleach cleaner? Doesn't make sense. Anti-mould or bleach infused cleaners. And then what you do is you take your toothbrush and then you'd scrub it all down. I'm surprised I didn't die of fumes, because the amount of chemicals that I was spraying in that little bathroom every Saturday and then spending time scrubbing away, I'm surprised I didn't inhale all of that. Maybe if I got my lungs checked, they're probably working at less of a capacity than they should. But now I'm all right. I'm still here. So that would be my job. So I got used to doing housework from a young age, and it became part of me. So Saturdays were always something I did. So now in my house, I still do that. Obviously, as I said, my mum comes and helps, which is an absolute blessing. But I still will run the Hoover around once in a while. And I tell you what, of all the housework things I do, the Hoover really pisses me off. I always say, with the Hoover, you do your Hoover and it's all good. But why is it when you unplug the Hoover, right? So you're in one room, and say you take the Hoover and you Hoover the living room, but you already plugged it in near the kitchen. And then you unplug the Hoover. And as you're winding that damn Hoover wire up, it gets caught. It always gets caught on a door or a chair or on something. And for love or money, you can't pull that bloody thing. I swear, I could do rock climbing and take the Hoover plug and swing it in the air and fling it over one rock, and I probably could hang off of it, because that grip is serious. You could pull a whole wall out, and it's so annoying because you wanted to just pull it all in and get it to retract, like you have those retracting buttons on tape measures and things, and you want it to retract in and then you can get on with your day. But no, you've got to go and find out where this blasted thing has got hooked onto to unhook it. But the funny thing is, what I do is I unhook it and then I walk all the way back to the Hoover and start again, rewinding the Hoover wire in, and it gets caught again. I don't learn. I should just really go and then unhook the Hoover wire and walk back with it and then wind up the Hoover, innit? Yeah, stupid. Now I'm talking about it, I'm thinking, why, Rachel? Why do you do that? And every single time it gets you, it always gets hooked, and you always end up screaming and cursing and getting annoyed with it, when you could just calmly unhook it, walk back to the Hoover, and you'll be fine. The things we do sometimes, honestly. Things that go through my head. There's quite a few, as we know. I do have a very random stream of consciousness. But these were some of the things I was thinking about today. First one is, I write a lot of emails. And I always start my emails, I notice, with, I hope you're well. Dear so-and-so, I hope you're well. But then I notice that, say I'm having a email conversation with that person, or, you forward on an old email that you sent to them because they haven't responded. Do you have to write, I hope you're well again? You don't do that in real life. You don't come up to somebody every day and go, I hope you're well, or how are things? You try and switch it up a bit. I think I'm going to have to start doing that with my emails, because recently I've been looking through emails where I'm trying to get hold of clients, or I'm trying to contact somebody about something, and I'm using the same greeting. And I'm sure it just sounds so insincere. It's almost the same as when you speak to somebody and they tell you their name and you ask them to spell it, or you ask them to repeat it, and I think it gets to 3 goes. and then you're like, I can't ask them again. I'm gonna just have to learn what they've got. I've just got to stick with it, because there's probably an acceptable time to ask a person their name again, or ask them to pronounce something again before it's deemed as rude. So I think I give myself three goes, and if I haven't got it, I'm just going to have to find another way of doing it. I've got some special skills of trying to remember people's names, because all of my friends know I am notoriously bad with remembering names. And when I say notoriously bad, I honestly think it's some sort of almost like a disability, or something that's gone on in my brain that literally shuts down. I would talk to somebody, they would tell me their name, and within half a second, it's gone. I've forgotten it. And I can't even retrieve it. I can't even be like, oh, sounds a bit like Sonia, Fiona. It's not even that. It's nothing. It's blank. I'm like that picture of, Homer Simpson, when they talk to him and he's just got that blank expression on his face, and his mind, there's nothing going on in there. That's me. When it comes to names, I cannot remember anyone's name. I've got one friend, Mia, and I know her name. And Mia, when we used to work together years ago, she recognised that I just didn't know anybody's names. And the only way that I could describe people was by their looks or certain traits. So our conversations would go something like this. I'd be like, so I was talking to, red hat guy, Tony. And Tony. And I was saying to him that next week when we go to the pub, what we should do is sit over where, where the girl, that girl that she always wears that fluffy pink jumper, Elaine. Yeah, Elaine, sit where Elaine and those guys sit, because Elaine is really good friends with, shouty guy. Oh, Mark. Yeah, Mark. That's literally how our conversation would be. So she was like enabling my my disability, or not enabling, I should say. She was assisting me in my disability. But I don't have Mia around with me all the time now. So I literally struggle with trying to remember people's names. And I've got lots of different techniques for, actually remembering people's names. So here's one. I can't believe I'm sharing this. So no one listens to this podcast, so it'll be fine. But here's one I do. If I meet somebody and I don't remember their name, which I know I won't, and then they'll say, like, let's swap numbers, which, is a great thing to do. What's your WhatsApp? Or, then we can talk later. I will hand them my phone and say, just put your details in there. It's fine. And, I'll just say, put your details in. And, then we can meet up, or we can talk later. So that's a good way of me remembering their name. But what I have to make sure I do when they do that and they hand me back the phone, I immediately look at the phone. Because if they do it, and then my phone shuts down, how am I going to find the name? Because I don't know what their name was in the first place, so I'm not going to find it. It's terrible. That's why social media is good for me. I think that's why I'll never give up Facebook. I don't use it, like I don't interact on Facebook as much as I probably used to, but it's a great way for me to put faces to names, because without it, I don't know who's who. So somebody could be talking about somebody, at least then I can go onto Facebook, type in their name, even if I'm not their friend, and a picture will come up. So I'm like, oh, it's that guy, or oh, I know who she is, I know who you're talking about. And that's the way I do it. I think my dad said that he's the same, that literally he cannot remember people's names. And I know also with my dad, he says that it's not his short-term memory or his long-term memory, just snippets of memory just go. So maybe, with our brains, they say that we don't use all of our brains, but also maybe our brains are a bit like the rest of our bodies, in that, sometimes when you go to the gym, some people have really strong arms, others have great glutes, or happen to have really good flexibility. There's an additional talent, but maybe they're not an all-rounder and have to work on certain parts of their body. Maybe our brains are the same way, in that there's patches of our brain that work really well and patches that are weaker, and it varies by person. You never know. It could be like that. So, what can I say that I'm very good with my brain? I'm very good with like random bits of information. I find, fascinating stories interesting. I I definitely can recall things that happen in the news, or incidents that happen. I'm good at knowing what happened when, but the person's face and their name, gone. Faces are just as bad as names for me. I remember when I used to work, prior to working in London now, I used to work for a media owner, basically like an advertising kind of company, back in London, back in the day. And I remember I'd go to meetings at some of these London agencies, and I'll sit in reception and wait for the person to come in, and then you say morning or hello and shake their hand, and then you go in and have a meeting. And I remember one guy, I came up and I shook his hand and introduced myself, said hello, I'm Rachel, and he was like, Rachel, I've met you like 3 times already. And I couldn't remember him. I literally could not remember his face. We talk on the phone and that was fine, but I just did not remember his face. I did not remember meeting him. I'd be terrible in a crime. If a crime was committed in front of me, there's no point. You know when they have those films and the robber's like, or the criminal is like, we need to kill her because, you know, she's seen my face. Don't bother with me. Seriously, I couldn't pick you out of a lineup if I tried. I really couldn't. You know, it could happen right in front of my face. You know when they say, I'll never forget that face. I forgot it. I forgot in the moment you did what you did. And yeah, no worries about me. If you bump into me and something happens, trust me, I won't remember. If I stand up in a court of law and they say, are you sure? I'd have to say, I am not sure. I'm sorry. It might have happened. Unless I filmed it on my phone, I couldn't be 100% sure. I'm that terrible with faces. On to what I've learnt. I think I talked about that last week. I wanted to have something which was something I've learned, or something I now know. And one of the things I was thinking about was, it goes back to memory again. So, you know, just talking about me not remembering faces or names. What I've learned is that your version or your memory or your version of what happened is your version of what happened, you know. And sometimes it might differ from a person that was in the same room as you. But sometimes, might be controversial, but I think sometimes you can sacrifice your version of what happened if it makes the other person happy or it comforts them, as long as it's not detrimental to you. So what I mean is, I'll start with something funny. So there's a funny little kids poem called Little Rabbit Foo Foo. And it's something that me and my son used to sing. And it's like, little rabbit foo foo riding through the forest, scooping up the wiggly worms and bopping them on the head. Really funny. And I used to read it to him, and then we found like a little YouTube video of it, and we used to watch it. It was like a little cartoon or a little animation. And this character, little rabbit foo foo, gets told by the fairy that if he keeps bopping all these different animals on the head, he is going to get turned into what was it? I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a little creature, as it were. And I could hand on heart remember that this little creature that I'd seen on the cartoon was this little dusty grey thing. And I said to my son, do you remember this? And he was talking and he's like, yeah, when he gets turned into the little creature. And I'm like, yeah. And remember it was this little grey thing? And he's like, I don't know if it was grey, Mum. And I'm like, yeah, it definitely was. It was grey. It was this little grey dusty thing. Remember? He goes, I remember what it was, but I don't remember if it was grey. Anyway, so we watch it, and I'm adamant in my head, but I haven't said anything, that it's grey. So we find the video on YouTube, and we're laughing, and as we see, he gets turned into this little creature, and it's green. It always was green. It never was grey. No one's changed the video. So my version of the truth in my head of what happened wasn't the real version. And it's not because I was trying to lie or I was trying to turn anything round. I honestly, genuinely believed that it was that version. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes what we think happened doesn't necessarily happen, and it's not a bad thing. As I said, it's not about things that are detrimental, like trauma, abuse, crimes, things like that. It's more about your everyday things, like something like that. Do you remember the cartoon? Or do you remember when we went to Skegness and you fell over? Or do you remember when you stole the ice cream and I got in trouble for it? It's those kind of conversations. And I think sometimes, depending on who it matters to most means that you have to make a judgment call as to whether to sacrifice your own truth. So I mean this by, children pick up a lot of things and they listen to a lot of things. And sometimes things that you say in passing or do in passing that you forget about, they remember dearly. They really remember. So think back to your own childhood, when you might have remembered something. So you might have remembered that you were slighted because, I don't know, your mum bought 2 donuts and your donut fell on the floor and your brother got the donut and then you never got to eat it. And you were so upset because your mum never bought you another one, or she didn't cut your brother's donut in half. So you were slighted. You didn't get that donut. So years later, you say to your mum, I remember as well when, the whole donut incident. And then your mum's like, what donut incident? What are you talking about? And you feel slighted because you weren't, you didn't remember, you remember it the way it was. And it had a profound effect on you. But for your mum, it was quite passing to her. So maybe she didn't remember and it wasn't such a big deal. So in that occasion, it might be good for the mum to be like, oh, listen to what, you had to say or the then child had to say and say, oh, that happened, did it? Oh, I'm sorry about that. The reason I say this is because I try and do this with my son. So he remembers things that maybe I don't really remember, or if honestly, I wasn't really paying much attention. So he might say, remember when, what's the one that he says, we went on holiday and he was swimming and he was in the pool. He couldn't swim very well and he thought he was drowning. And it took everybody ages to get him and it really upset him. And what I remember is that he looked like he was struggling a little bit and then the boy that was with him quickly pulled him up and it happened in a matter of seconds. But his truth means more to him than my truth or what I think I saw. So really in that kind of conversation, the way the conversation could go or should go is him saying, Mum, do you remember when I nearly drowned and I was so distressed and I really thought that was the end and there was nobody there? And my response, I think, should be, God, I'm really sorry that happened to you. And, I didn't run there in time. Thank goodness that boy was there to grab you. And then the conversation moves on. He feels fine. He feels that he feels vindicated. He feels like he's been listened to and understood. And no harm, no foul on my part. I know that it only took a few seconds, but what is the point of me pointing that out to him as a child or, maybe an older person? What is the point? Because it means more to him. That truth meant more to him than it did to me. So I hope that makes sense. But that's something that I try and do a lot. I had a chat with my cousin. He's great, my cousin. And we were having a funny conversation. And we talked about an incident where when we were kids, we were going to like a play scheme. And at the play scheme, it's one of those things that, schools in the summer holiday would have this thing where parents who are working obviously couldn't look after their kids. So we'd go there for a whole school day. So it was on school grounds, but run by maybe the local council. And I remember it differently to he remembers it. But long story short, we ended up walking by the River Lee looking for some kittens. And my auntie, who was in her office, looked out of the window across the river and saw her son and niece out of the play scheme, and walking by themselves. And she screamed at us and we literally ran back. Now, when we were reminiscing about it, his version of the truth is I was the one that told us to go. For me, I remember him telling me to go. But there was no point me pushing it to the end. If he remembers it that way, he remembers it that way. If I remember it that way, I remember it that way. No harm, no foul. It's not detrimental to both of us. It's a funny story that, really at the end of it, regardless of who went where, we ended up by the River Lee and getting seen by our auntie working in the office. I mean, what were the odds of that? That is the funny part of the story, not whose idea it was to go in the first place. So on that occasion, in my head, I made that judgment call of I went back and forth a little bit. Then I thought, it doesn't matter. If he wants to believe that way, fantastic. Because it's funny. It's a funny story. So, yeah, sometimes we can sacrifice our own truth to help others if if it benefits the other person. So I don't mean, as I keep saying, it's not about if you were really wronged and it was detrimental to your own mental health that, you know, your truth has been questioned. That is completely different. But if it's for, you know, as I said, for the sake of a child telling you something that happened to them, you know, don't dismiss it. And also, if it's for the sake of the joke of the story, why are we going to pontificate over who did what right at the start of it? One of the things that I'd like to just give as a suggestion before I go to do is, I find that meditation is a really good way to defrag your brain. So I talked about that before. Being on the train is a great way to meditate. And when I say meditate, it doesn't necessarily mean sitting, you know, cross-legged in a sauna with your eyes closed and, you know, chanting. It can just be just taking that small amount of time to think about something you want to think about. That's meditation. You're meditating upon something. So you could just take that time and maybe think, you know, why do I like eating mangoes so much? Or when I next go shopping, I think I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just see if I can buy the things I need. You know, just something like that. A little conversation with yourself in your head, a little break. It's a good way to do. It's almost like a Control-Alt-Delete for your head. With all that's going on in the world and all that's going on in your brain, sometimes it's good to just give it a little bit of a clean, a little bit of a brush up, just by taking the time to center yourself and think. And I find I do meditate in different ways. I meditate in the traditional way, which is, you know, silently and clearing my head. But I also meditate by just sitting and just thinking about the things I want to think about in silence, so just contemplation. And I think this is another thing that is beneficial to mental health. I think that's going to be a running stream through these podcasts, you know, trying to achieve good mental health. You know, there's lots of mental health kind of podcasts out there and physical health podcasts, but my mental health is just really trying to be you, enjoy being you. We should be thankful we've got this lovely squishy machine that's in our skulls that helps us to not only live but also helps us to have many different experiences that we can just have from our living room. Just sit there and think. I remember somebody said reading is amazing because really what your brain is doing is looking at words on a page and helping you to hallucinate. That is what reading is doing, because you're creating pictures in your mind just by reading words on a page. That's an amazing thing. Your brain is an amazing thing. So try to do some form of meditation, and hopefully I'll get to speak to you again in the next week. Bye.